Hello and welcome to a fifth line day. We're in gate 55, the gate of spirit, the gate of abundance, and the fifth line here is called growth. In the second line, we had distrust. And when we come to the resonance of this, we come to the fifth line and we find growth. The only way to overcome distrust is through the power of seduction. It's through the wave of selfishness or selflessness. In the exaltation, we find the unusual ability in a position of power to accept advice and transform it innovatively. The gift in a position of power allows one to continue to lead rather than being perceived as being led. The emotional strength and spirit derived from positions of power. The unusual ability, it only exists in a position of power, otherwise it's not there. And the power here is an assumption. It may or it may not come. Well, remember the projection field of the fifth line, and it's essential for the 55 to learn how to cooperate. It's essential for the fifth line to be projected on as the one who can bring the necessary spirit, because that's part of its gift. So when it's in power, when it is projected on, even though it doesn't guide anything because it's being cooperative, it gets to keep its power and its identity, which of course, being individual, is very important. It gives you a hint, actually, about the depth of the mutation that has to come. It's the individual who has to be ready for it. And in order to be ready for it, they have to give up, for the sake of the awareness, their individuality. One of the things to recognize about this is that the only way in which the 55-5 is going to fulfill their spirit is if they are in power socially. If you have a boss with the 55-5, he doesn't actually care if you like him or not when he's in a bad mood. The position of power allows him immunity in the social sense. But they don't have to feel like somebody is measuring their cup because they're the ones in the position of power. If they're not in a position of power, they can be very unhappy. They carry underneath it the resonance, of the second line distrust. And people can become very suspicious of them because the mood goes up and down so much. So these people feel good in their spirit when they have work, somewhere where they're able to have that sense of authority. And they can live through their moods without being challenged because of the nature of the moods. So being a boss and having the 55-5 is kind of a perfect position, really. In the detriment, an integrative, no, hold on, I've said that word wrong, integrative openness, there it is, an integrative openness that in its broad acceptance of advice may be eventually eclipsed. An emotional openness where the spirit is at risk from conditioning. And here in this detriment, this is where we get a taste of what has to come. And it's the most mystical of detriments in that sense. Ra said that this fifth line of the 55 is where God lives in the chart. And it's not talking about the being, it's about the spirit. And here's the possibility where the individual can allow its spirit to blend with another. He said that on the mundane plane, that's not at all what it looks like, of course. It just looks like someone's being overwhelmed emotionally. When they're not in power, what happens to the 55-5 is that they try to get there through harmonizing. In doing so, well, that can end up being a problem because there's no authority there and the power to withstand the condemnation isn't there. And remember, my mouth's not working right today. Remember that we are dealing with individuality here. We are talking about freaks and geniuses, about strangers, about those who can be rejected or alienated, put on the outside, ostracized. So what you have in the detriment is this need to find a way to get to the power source, but at the same time, because they're going up and down in their wave, they may not be able to get there because they don't have the authority. What the 55-5 needs in their life is to learn that only when they are in the mood should they be doing things. because that's the only possibility they have of being in their power. And it's the same for all 55s. It's the same for all individuality. Only when you're in the mood. The moment that you're trying to do things when you're not in the mood, your power is just simply not going to be there. And then that projection field, whoa, that's just is it gonna hit you where it hurts? And of course, when they are in power, they can be deeply seductive, because this is another feature of our fifth lines. And so they can hook you in, bring you in. The grounding to the line of growth is, of course, the 59 in the fifth line, which is the femme fatale, or the Casanova, which is, of course, the line of seduction in terms of bonding. It's all a projection, though, remember. These people may or may not be what is being projected onto them. All fifth lines need to learn how to use their seduction, because it is a part of their makeup. It's a part of who they are. And I don't mean use it in that manipulative sort of way, but it's coming to terms with it, knowing that it's what you're putting out there, because it's really why people interact with you the way they do, because that's part of the projection field that is around you. Perhaps it can help with bringing in the spirit of the 55. It can really smooth things for the mutation that is coming. Can you seduce a mutation? Whoa. Oh, that would be weird, wouldn't it? But anyway, otherwise, let's see. I was just going to say seduction can be quite a distraction, and I did really go off on a slight distraction there. Yeah, so it's the distraction that comes when strategy and authority maybe are not in use, but the seduction of a correct strategy and authority is really powerful, and there's nothing wrong with it. Again, it's something we often may sort of have an opinion about, or have a word prejudice about, but in its place, it's there for a reason. You know, it is there to help the fifth line be that powerful force that they can be, so the general can come in and they can bring their practical solutions. They can sometimes be very seductive with their practical solutions. So the moon has been in gate 11 since 9:08 this morning, and it moves into gate 10 next at 19:50. This is the behavior of the self, and it's a very important gate in our mechanic, because it's a role gate, and it is the gate that gives us the descriptions for all of our profiles. And through genetic continuity, it gives us keynotes for all of the lines in our chart, wherever we find them. And then the next gate in the moon moves to is in the root, and it is the 58th gate, the gate of the joyous, the gate of aliveness and vitality, with its pressure to correct. The root is a motor center and a pressure center, and this is the energy that this center gives to the 58. And it's in the channel of judgment, the 58, so this tells you a lot about it. It's logical circuitry, which we know can be very critical. So part of the learning curve here is that of understanding what correction is needed, what correction will benefit the collective, and not turning it inwards into what do I need to correct about myself, or what do they need to correct about themselves. It's not a personal thing in that sense. Okay, so thank you very much for joining me for this fifth line, top of the hexagram tomorrow, and I look forward to seeing you for the sixth line then. Until then, as always, love yourself and go gently.